Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, then you can expect to find videos on the topics of marketing, remote working, career tips, self-growth, and sometimes lifestyle in Toronto as well. So if you're new, welcome. In today's video, I will be answering a question that I have received probably the most out of all of the questions since I began creating videos for this channel, and that is actually my own personal career story. So today's video will be all about my academic background, my previous jobs, what I studied in university, where I have lived previously, what is my current job, etc, etc. So I will tell you all about my personal career story, and this video will be a little different than the other ones that you'll see on my channel, which are more educational, and I guess this one will be more a story-like video. So if you are interested in learning about my career story, and if you're interested in these types of videos, then continue watching. Let's get started with my story. Okay, so since we said it's a story, we have to go all the way back to my childhood. Just kidding. I'm in a playground and I am filming this video outside today because there's a lot of things that we needed to do today, but I still will plan to film this video today as well. So I am taking bits and pieces of the day and trying to fit in filming this video for you guys. So not going back to my childhood, but let's go back to the beginning of my story, which starts in Turkey. I am from Turkey. I've seen a lot of comments where you guys are trying to guess where I'm from by looking at my name, and yes, you guys are right. I am from Turkey, and a lot of you guys are also asking me where I learned my English from and why I don't really have a Turkish accent. And the reason for that is because when I was just 6 years old, we moved to US, Arizona with my family, as my dad was doing an MBA at the time, and we lived in Arizona for 2 years. So I went to kindergarten and first grade in America. And I think that was the first time that I started learning English. It was even better than my Turkish at that point in time, I guess. So yeah, that's how I started learning English. And then just moving a little forward, I did my primary school, middle school, and high school in Turkey. But I was going to an international school, and all of the education was in English, primarily. Basically, Turkish was the second language that we were learning at school. So that again explains why my English is this level. So because I was going to an international school, I kind of knew that I was going to study abroad for university, and my bucket list university was actually McGill University in Montreal, Canada. I wanted to study political sciences and economics, and McGill University was, I think, that year that I went to university, which was 2006, ranked number 12 on a global scale for political sciences, which clearly was the primary decision that I wanted to go for McGill. And also because I really like the city of Montreal. We visited with my family as tourists and we fell in love. It was spring, so I had no idea how the winter would be like. After high school, I went to study at McGill. I did a major in political science and minor degree in economics, and so far I have actually never practiced my undergraduate degree. Between the years of 2006 and 2010, I was studying at McGill University, then graduated, stayed there for a little bit more, and I wanted to do an internship. I wanted to look for jobs in Montreal. I wanted to stay. I really loved the city, and it was quite difficult because although my French was advanced level, I was not bilingual in English and French, and that's pretty much a big requirement for all of the good jobs that you would want to get in Montreal. Probably I could have stayed and forced myself to get a job or just improve my French level, but I noticed that the type of jobs that I was looking for weren't really available in Montreal. So after an internship in business development at an NGO, I decided to go back to Turkey. I wanted to get a corporate experience in Turkey, and then I would be able to decide what I really enjoyed and what I did not. So that was the point, and I went back to Turkey in 2011 and got my first corporate job in a very big group company in Turkey. Yes. So my first job in Turkey was in the business development field and in an industry that I had never imagined that I would be working in, and I was at the age 21, I believe, and it was a very, very slow industry, and it really bored me to death, but I learned a lot from working in that company, which I worked for approximately for 2.5 years. So it was in the construction industry, and I consider those 2.5 years as a little MBA on its own. I learned so much about the business world, about what I did like and what I did not like. I found out that I was actually interested in marketing. At the same time, I decided to pursue an MBA degree, and I applied for one of the universities that I really liked in Istanbul. During the MBA program, I took a lot of marketing and e-commerce courses and discovered that I really enjoyed both. I was also part of the startup community within the university, and I decided then that I really wanted to do marketing, and I also wanted to establish my own company at one point in time, whether then or later on in my life, but I knew I wanted to do that. So those were two of the biggest outcomes from my MBA degree. One of the conditions to successfully graduate from the MBA program was to do a graduation project, and the topic that I chose to do my project in was content marketing, and this was year 2013 or 14, and by that time content marketing wasn't really a big thing in Turkey. It wasn't really spoken about either. So it was a year when I actually found trouble finding resources on content marketing when I was searching for Turkish companies. Little did I know that that project that I completed on content marketing would become a game changer in my career. Next job was again in a very big corporate telecommunications company in Turkey that so many people actually aspire to work in, and I was lucky to get in, but it wasn't the right job for me. The only outcome from that job was actually meeting my husband, and 6 months after I started that job, I actually quit, and we decided to get married with my husband, with my now husband. When I quit that job, I really didn't have a plan for what I would do afterwards. I just knew that I wanted to establish my own company, and I wanted to be in marketing for sure. But I had no plan. I did not have a new job offer, but I had a lot of ambition. So I started working on a startup project that I co-founded with my brother and my husband, and there was an e-commerce project that we launched on a Shopify platform. It was a great experience, but that project didn't go as planned. We decided to close the operations in 1 year approximately. We had different goals at the time, so we just decided to call it a day and close the operations of that business, but it was a wonderful learning experience for me. At the same time, I actually interviewed a startup company that was in mobile technology industry in Turkey, and it was for a marketing executive role, which I had no practical experience of beforehand, but I was quite confident with my marketing skills, and I really knew that I wanted to be in marketing, so I went for it. And what I did to differentiate myself at that interview was I actually went to the interview with a marketing plan proposal, and that marketing proposal was definitely the thing that got me that job. It was a fast-growing company, it was a startup, and I was hired as the head of marketing, and I was to build my own team and work with all of the other departments that I had not previously worked with, such as product development, design, UX, and I was working with web developers, software developers, etc. And it was something that I hadn't done previously, but I was really excited to do, and I put all of the theoretical knowledge that I had gained from my MBA and into that job that I had. That was super precious for me, and that was the first ever hands-on marketing experience in my career, and that was a big learning curve for me. Since this was my first ever experience managing a marketing team and building a marketing team from scratch, I really needed to prove myself. So I was consuming all of the information that I was able to find on content marketing, on how to manage a team, on how to organize events and do event marketing as well, because that was also part of the job. So I was trying to consume any and all type of marketing material that I was able to find online, and was also trying to connect with other marketers in Turkey. The problem with this job was that it was really consuming all of my energy because it really demanded too much of me, and at the same time I was commuting 2 hours to the office every day and 2 hours back from the office every day. So that made 4 hours. I was trying to make efficient use of this time, but it was 4 hours of my day lost every single day, and I just felt incredibly tired after a while. So I decided that I needed to look for other opportunities, and if we were going to continue living in Istanbul, I needed to find either a job that I would like that was close to my house, or that potentially something remote. So this was the first time that I ever decided or thought of working remotely, and at that time remote working wasn't this big concept that it is today, and it was just a word that I thought of. I didn't even know that it was a concept or a trend, or that it would become whatever it is today. So one night, I remember very clearly, I was very exhausted, very tired of everything that I was doing, and I needed something to change. So I remember clearly, my husband was sleeping. I opened my laptop in bed and I searched for 2 keywords on LinkedIn: remote and inbound. And not many results came up, but there was one that was quite interesting, and I think the position was called inbound marketing specialist, and there was a location attached to the job posting, and I think it was Czech Republic or another country in Europe that I don't remember of right now, but it also said remote. And all of a sudden I was entering this whole new world that I had not known of before, and I sent an application to that job. It really seemed like something I would really enjoy and be good at, and it was remote, so it was basically pure magic at that time. It was just what I needed. The fact that it was also an international company was amazing for me, because that's where I wanted to head to. I didn't want to stay local and in Turkey, so everything seemed like it would be the perfect opportunity. And surprisingly enough, when it was the next morning, I had an email from the HR recruiter from that company, and we agreed for a time that day to do our first interview. A few days later, I start that job, and my main responsibility is taking care of the content creation and marketing campaign execution for one of the newest clients that this marketing agency has brought in. And they are headquartered in Europe. They're a global B2B software as a service company, and they work in an industry that I have not even heard of before. They are in the labeling software industry, and since I have no idea what goes on in this industry, I am starting from zero, and I need to update myself. I need to educate myself on this industry so that I can actually do the content creation. Long story short, I have taken on so many different roles and responsibilities within this marketing agency, and I have really enjoyed my experience with them. And you might be seeing this baby hand that goes up and down sometimes, because I have my little one right here next to me. She is playing as I'm recording, because I guess that's how I have to do it these days. I have been trying to film this video for the past week. Every nap time I turn on the camera, I try to do it, and it doesn't work, so we are doing it together. And of course we have our little Sophie the giraffe with us, because yep, I have to entertain her from time to time. Over time, my responsibilities increased at the agency. I did so much more than what I started to do. Initially, I started part-time and remote, and I was working from the comfort of my home in Istanbul. I no longer had to commute, and it was really amazing. It was really the best thing that ever happened while I lived in Istanbul. Sometime later, the account manager that I was working very closely with, he went on to launch his own company, so he left, and I was responsible for the EMEA region, which stands for Europe, Middle East, and Asia. Something I shouldn't forget to mention is that is this very interesting milestone in my life, where I was working with Wings for You for nearly a year, and me and my husband, we decided to move to Bali, Indonesia as digital nomads, because we were both working remotely at the time, and we thought to ourselves, what are we doing in Istanbul? Do we have to stay rooted in our house? Do we have to be here because we no longer have office spaces that we need to go to regularly? So yes, we book our tickets to Bali, and this is a very long story. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but the reason why I'm mentioning mentioning is because what happened was very interesting. So we book our tickets to Bali, but just before the travel to Bali happens, I'm invited to the Czech Republic to do a team retreat, to do a team meeting with the rest of my team. And it's actually the first time ever that I meet everyone on the team in person in the Czech Republic. It was a super interesting experience because I had been working with these people for nearly a year and I hadn't seen any of them in person. I knew their faces, but I hadn't really, established that in-person connection. And I go to Czech Republic, I'm in Prague for the first time in my life, and I get into a car with all these people that I haven't met, and it's just so strange. And it was a very interesting and a very nice experience to have. It was the first in my life. And the reason why I started telling this story is because the outcome of that week is very, very interesting. The day before I go back to Turkey and the next day after going to Turkey, we have the tickets to Bali. I'm offered a new job and a promotion at the company. The job is the account manager role that my previous colleague had left, and I will be responsible of taking care of all of those accounts, the client projects. I will still be doing the marketing execution, but I will now, from then onwards, I will be the main contact person, the account manager for all of those clients. So since it's an amazing opportunity and since I love working at the company, I accept the offer. But little did I know that it would be so difficult to work from Bali with all of the clients that are in Europe. Before taking this job, I was actually not really dependent on the time zones that much. But after going to Bali, I'm in the Asia time zone, and my clients are all in the Europe time zone, and we have regular calls with them. So after a week passes, we realize that it's going to be a very, very crazy work structure because I need to work in the evenings when I'm in Bali with my clients that are based in Europe, and it just simply didn't work for us. So we decided to go back. We canceled the temporary stay in Bali that we planned for several months, and we stopped at around 6 to 7 days. We just told ourselves that it was a very short experience. It was interesting while it lasted, but we need to go back to Turkey because I need to work with the Europe time zone. So that's what we do. That wasn't the whole story, but if you're interested, I can tell you the story of us moving to Bali and then moving back in a week in another video. If you're interested, let me know. But let's move on. What happened in my life after taking the account manager role is just being very, very busy all the time and having to participate in a lot of client calls, having to travel a lot. I traveled to Luxembourg, Paris a few times, Singapore, and did I travel anywhere else? I'm not sure. A lot of traveling in my life from that point onwards, and I really, really enjoyed it. So let's fast forward a little bit more. We have a travel planned with my husband to Miami, and we're gonna go and visit my brother. We were going for 2 weeks. One would be just as tourists, and the second would be working remotely from Miami. And that week, a few interesting things happened, and I came out of that trip with an interview with a Miami-based marketing agency where I would not be focused on the account management but more on the actual marketing execution side of things, which I decided that I was enjoying more. A few weeks later, we are back in Turkey, and I am offered this job with this Miami-based agency. It started as a remote job, but they wanted me to go to Miami and stay for a few months to do an orientation together, and then we would decide if I would continue to stay in Miami and apply for work visa, or I would go to Canada, as I was still waiting for my PR application to Canada to be resolved. The story of how I actually got that job from that Miami-based company is very long, and it's quite interesting. So again, if you're interested in learning the details of that story too, let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, I am just going to skip all the details because this is the bigger career story and not the details of those specific stories. What happened next is, because I'm offered this job that pays quite well. It's also an American company, and it was an experience that I wanted to add to my CV because I had worked with Turkish companies, I had worked with a European company, and I had been to Europe and Asia many times in the previous job that I had. And now I kind of wanted to start working in a North American company and experience that culture and that work environment as well. Again, the story of how and why we moved from Turkey to Miami, then Miami to Toronto, is just much bigger and much more detailed. So skipping all of that.
Several months later.
After moving to Toronto, I decided I want to work with a company that is based here so that I would actually have a team that I can meet at least from time to time so that I can socialize, because I am new to the city, I'm new to the country, and I actually want to make friends. I want to see my colleagues. And it was the point in my career that I kind of wanted to shift from remote working to actually working in a physical office space, just because of that socialization factor, and also just to get to know people in the city. That was my idea, my goal at the time. However, before I started interviewing for jobs in Toronto, I learned that I'm pregnant. And because of this amazing news, I knew that I would need to tell any company that I would interview that I am pregnant and that I would need to go on maternity leave. And because of this interesting timeline that happened in my life, I had to adjust my applications and my goals for the year. And instead of applying to the big technology companies that I was striving to get into, I decided I need to make the remote working a priority in 2019. And I knew that it would be more difficult to commute to and back from an office, as I was also furthering along in my pregnancy. So again, my preference was for remote work again, and my biggest chance was coming across Titan Creative, another HubSpot partner marketing agency based in Toronto, and all of the team members are actually living in Toronto, but the work structure was remote. I sent a message to Scott on LinkedIn, who is the founder of the company and who's an amazing person and who runs the company along with Mark. And I have an interview with them a few days later, and we have an amazing synergy. My expertise and my goals match perfectly with what they're searching for, and I started working with them. So I had an interesting work structure where I would work nearly full-time with Titan Creative, but also allocated some time to my clients from my consultancy business that I had just launched as well. That was the work structure that I had for around 6 to 7 months, until very later on in my pregnancy, where I decided that I need to take some time off before the baby arrives. And since April, I have been officially on maternity leave and have not worked with my clients or Titan Creative. But you know, when you have that entrepreneur soul, you can kind of never stop working in a way, but I am really trying to be present. I'm really taking the time off currently and being with the baby. So YouTube has been something that kind of moved forward after I gave birth to Ada, and just because I really enjoy the content creation and sharing the knowledge on YouTube, and since this community has been growing surprisingly well and fast, I really want to keep continuing this content creation for YouTube, and I am hoping that you're enjoying it. So that is basically the story of my career, and I know I have skipped a lot of details in terms of what I have done specifically, the projects that I worked, the clients that I worked with at these agencies. But when I go into the details, it is going to be a super long story, maybe for hours and hours. So if there are specific parts that you are more interested in learning about, such as the move to Bali, my tasks or responsibilities as an account manager, or what I did at Titan Creative, etc, etc. So if there are bits and pieces within my story that you want to hear more about, let me know. And I hope you have enjoyed listening to my quite long story. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye bye.